Hello, lovely people. I missed that countdown sound. I missed it
Mhm.
so much. It's been 2 months since the last Devrel show. Sorry about that, folks. I know I said that I was going to do a show every other weeks, which I've done for a year now. But
Mhm.
for the last 2 months, I was not supposed to have at least two shows because I was supposed to be at conferences and I had two guests who dropped me because life happened, and no stress about that. As I said, life happened, so I was not mad at them. That just happened, and even if I have. Let's say it's not time to put my ego aside, but a pretty impressive list of potential guests for the next Devrel
Yeah.
show. I decided not to replace those shows because I'm looking for a job right now, and let me tell you, it's been a while and it's more exhausting than working trying to find a job. So I was like, you know what, no show, I'm going to concentrate on looking for my next role. But you know what, I was missing it, and I had our guest this week that was already scheduled. So I was like, oh no, let's go back to do that show every other weeks because I miss that show. I miss the Devrel show. So really happy to come back. And as I said, do not despair, folks. I'm back for the show mostly every other week, except one or two exceptions because of conferences and other stuff. And you know what? I'm fully booked with guests until 2027. Meaning
Nice.
that like I have guests already booked in their calendar for the end of the year this year,
Mhm.
and I have a list of potential guests, like people that said like, yes, we want to be on the show, Fred. I have enough guests for 2026, doing that every other weeks. So a lot of amazing people are going to be on the show, meaning that it's not the end of the show. I'm going to continue to do that for a while because that's always a pleasure for me to do that.
Mhm.
But enough talking myself, enough for the introduction about the show. I want to welcome my guest, Elvis. Thanks for being on the show. How is life?
Yeah, life's pretty good. I don't know if you saw this actually, but we announced our Series A yesterday. So it's been a lot of traffic, a lot of, PR, press releases,
I
booked
saw
sales
that.
calls. Yeah. So things are
Uh,
a little bit hectic, but I am excited to have this as a break from that hecticness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good problem to have. Like when you
Yeah.
raise money and it become hectic and like there's a lot of things to do. That's a good problem to have. So congratulations to you and the team.
Mhm.
I saw it's a pretty good Series A too. I mean, like there's different level of Series A's when it comes to like founding, and from my point of view, it's a pretty good Series A. So good job about that.
Mhm.
Again, to you and the team. But for the people that do not know you, who are you?
Yeah, so I guess hey everyone, I'm Elvis. Him, his. I live in San Francisco. Let's see, I'm a Christian. I go to Epic Church for other people in SF. I currently work as a developer advocate at Chalk, and I really love working here. And we're doing a lot of data infrastructure, ML, AI workloads. And before this, I worked at Warp, which is like a modern terminal written in Rust. And before that, I was in college. I actually dropped out of college to join Warp, so that was very fun. Um, it was also super interesting because like Warp was like recently out of stealth, and so my parents were like, "Is this even a real company? Like you guys don't have like all these things." That's because they were used to, because I had interned in college at Facebook, so they were like, "Go back to Facebook." But things got a lot better after we announced fundraisers, and then it's also because it was during COVID, so I was like working essentially just like in my room, and they're like, "How do we know you're not just like playing video games or something?" And it's funny because we had one of our first retreats in Hawaii, and so like one day I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to Hawaii, guys," and they're like, "Wait, why?" And I'm like, "To meet with my team," and they're like, "Oh, you're like thing is real," and so that was a very interesting experience. Yeah, so I was there for like 3 years. I was there a long time. Uh, yeah, now I'm at Chalk, and it's been really fun. I really like working on dev tools and thinking about DevRel and being able to like talk to developers every day. It's kind of like my dream. You just geek out, at conferences and at events. So it's been a dream job for me so
Yeah,
far.
that's good being
Yeah,
able to be paid to do those kind of things. It's pretty great. And
yeah,
it's funny about your comment about your parents like not knowing like are you really working for a company?
yeah.
Uh, like my dad mostly, it came from a place where like you have like it was working for government subsidies, and like they have retirement plans, and they really had like job security. And he never really understood the fact that like job security in tech does not really exist, or
Hmm.
even a couple of years ago was not the case when I started. And the fact that like retirement plans do not exist that much. You have like in the US some 401k, but
Yeah,
like making them understand also like a startup is one kind of company that is working differently than other companies. So
yeah,
it's a weird discussion to have when people are not like in the tech industry and do not understand exactly what's working on. Uh,
yeah. Especially if the tool is like a hardcore developer tool, you know. It's funny because they've gotten so much better in like being able to like watch videos or like read my content, and so now they're like fanatics. Like my little sister, she's in middle school, and she used to be like, "Oh, like do you know that black screen on your computer? Like they're making it modern and like easy to use, and you can use your mouse." And so like it's fun being able to see them kind of become evangelists as well, just from like being around it.
That's pretty nice. I've never
Yeah,
had that. I mean, like I wish my parents would have understand what I was doing. Like when I was a software developer, it was a
mhm,
little bit easier for them to understand that like I was creating the thing that they have on the computer, and they were like they understood that I was like building that. They really didn't understand how I was doing it, but they
yeah,
understood that I was doing it. But when I
the end
moved to a
product. Yeah,
developer advocate role, they were like, "So what are you doing?" And when I started that role, I was traveling a lot, and they were like, why are you traveling that much? And
yeah,
basically it ended up to, okay, my job is speaking at conferences. And there was kind of like the simpler way. I know it's not the only thing, but like that was the way that they understood what I was doing.
yeah,
My job is to speak at conferences, but developer advocate role is can be a little bit complicated to talk, like to make it understand for someone that is not technical, someone that does not work in tech.
yeah.
uh,
And it changes so much depending on the company. So it's like you can have very different types of DevRel, and so that also makes it more complicated to explain like what you're working on or like how it fits and things. Yeah,
mhm.
it's definitely
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna
Sorry, go
say
ahead.
I've the way that I end up thinking about it is I usually split it up into like there's like engineering, product, marketing, and people kind of like just pick a little subsection depending on what they like to work on. And so I tend to be a lot less so product. I'm more so into like engineering and marketing because I really like go to market and being able to like communicate like the value of a developer tool or like an
Yeah,
infra platform or like an SDK. So I really like that because I think it's a fun problem to think about. It's like how do I
it is.
make this accessible, like this concept, or easy to understand, or like for this persona, it's easier if I talk about it this way. And so that's a fun problem for me. So I really like sitting on the engineering and marketing side of things.
It is. I like
Yeah.
it. When I talk about like who am I or what I'm doing or who am I
Hmm.
as a developer advocate, I always say like I'm the friendly, social, technical, approachable face of the company, and this is really
Yeah,
the
totally.
mix between like the human side and the technical side of it. So just before I have a question for you, but just before
Hmm.
Patrick, it's been a long time, my friend. I hope life is good. Thanks for joining us today. And there is Tess. We
All
say
right.
shout out Elvis. So I guess
Yeah.
no shout out for Fred, but shout out for Elvis. But it's fine. Patrick say hey Fred. So I think we're good here. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you're gonna have a great time with us talking about Devrel and all the stuff from Elvis
Hmm.
point of view. So question for you. So you
Hmm.
said the job is can be different from one company to the other, and I cannot agree more. Which is kind of like a weird thing to me because I feel like we should have like a clear definition about what is developer relations, since it may be a little
Hmm.
bit newer for many companies, but at the same time, it's been there for multiple years. I mean, I'm doing that for 14 years now. I'm being a
Yeah.
developer advocate, and when I started, it was mostly big company where not a lot of people doing that. But now every startups or most every startups hire developer advocates, so we should be able to have some kind of like common ground rule about what is a developer advocate. But unfortunately, I'm interviewing right now to find my next challenge,
Hmm.
and I need to have a discussion about, okay, you put things on paper in the job description, but
JD. Yeah.
please tell me like
What do you
what
want?
is it you
Yeah.
mean with developer relation? What are the goals you're trying to achieve? What are the
What is
issues you're
success?
trying to
Yeah.
solve? What success means? Because it changed so much from one company to the other. When you're but compared to when you're looking for a software developer job, it's clear you're going to build software. Like what's going to change is like the technology and how you're going to do it,
Yeah,
and
the
how you're
stack.
going to work with the team. But like the job is the same no matter the company you work for. So super long introduction um,
DevRel.
to ask you like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what is a developer advocate job at Chalk, where you work right now? So what's your job? What are you doing,
Yeah.
quote unquote, day to day?
Uh, yeah. So I think at a high level, it ends up being influenced a lot by the go-to-market motion for the product, right? Like being a DevRel at like a PLG is very different than like a company that's doing like top-down sales, as well as like the persona or ICP that you're um, building for. I think at Chuck, we have a lot of emphasis on engineering because like we're building an infrastructure platform for machine learning. And so we are working mostly with machine learning teams and data teams. And so you kind of have to be able to like meet them where they are in terms of like understanding their pain points. And their pain points are actually not bespoke isn't the right word, but you probably wouldn't have interfaced with their pain points unless you actually tried to deploy some kind of
Mm.
production ML system. Um, yeah, so it ends up being engineering heavy and it ends up being a lot of writing just because it's like every time we build something new, you have to be able to like contextualize why we built it, what it's good for, like what are the use cases that we built this particular feature for, and how does it help like a particular team ship faster and deploy models faster. And so that ends up being the main two focuses for us at least. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. And
Yeah.
you've been at Chalk for 6 months, and before you were at Reflex, but also you were at Warp.
Yeah.
Are the jobs where actually at Warp you were a developer experience engineer,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
sometimes mean developer advocate, but like maybe a more ends-on code developer advocate. Like what was the role about?
Yeah. So developer experience ended up being closer to it aligned more with customer success, right?
Okay.
Or developer success because we're building for developers. And that was really different than Chalk because it was POG, right? And so a lot of the motion was like, or I guess a lot of my job was like figuring out, like, for example, we had like 4,000 GitHub issues, right? And it's like, how do you classify them and then encode those into essentially creating product experiences that solve a bunch of like these smaller pain points. And so like a good example is like uh, someone let's say might churn from the product because like they have muscle memory, right? They're like trying to use certain key bindings, but the key bindings aren't there yet.
Mm,
Or they might churn for like a bigger reason, but there also tends to be like this like smaller segment of users that they don't churn for one big thing, but a collection of like small things.
yeah.
So even like thinking about like how do we figure out what collection of these small things end up leading to someone like not using the product or not being able to love it as they should, and then being able to like eventually triage that. So that was a lot of customer success, a lot of thinking about the product experience. I ended up also doing a lot of like ops work, like streamlining a bunch of pipelines to essentially scale up the go-to-market motion and things like that. And my favorite thing though is that working on the terminal is super nice because it's like, oh, I wish the terminal did this, and it's like, oh, in 2 months we could actually build that, right? Or like Warp would host hackathons like once a year about, and you could just work on anything that you wanted in that 1 week, and it's like in
Wow.
that hackathon, you're like building the thing that you wish Warp had at that particular time, which is really, really cool. And I really love that in terms of like that culture, like
I
being
love
able to
that.
like, yeah, be like self-empowered to like make the terminal better the way that you want it because you are the end user. And so it's funny because Warp ended up not really having like product managers because everyone was so product focused at the company because they're building for themselves, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I like companies that are having those hackathon or those like hack days, or maybe it's a week. It just need to be well implemented, like meaning that like you take
yeah,
this in consideration based on all the other work you've done. Because I've been in a company where we had like a day every month, but like I had so many other things to do that it was like I would
yeah.
love to dedicate that day, but you
In
didn't
practice, you
took
can't.
this in
Yeah,
consideration. Like in
yeah.
practice, it's impossible to me, but I've seen so many innovation coming from those days because there is like the things you put in the roadmap because someone decided it goes in the roadmap, or because this is what the users want, or
Hmm.
this is what the vocal users says they want. But there is those like small features or small issues or even big one that are not a priority, that maybe nobody thinks about, but you as a user, it makes a
Face
huge
it. Yeah,
difference. And sometimes they may not get popular, but sometimes I've seen that like they're usually the most popular things because they really come from the art. They really come from like, hey, this is my pain point. This is what I want to
yeah.
fix. Has someone working there, and you do it, and usually users get excited about those. So it's usually pretty good. I can't remember which company started that culture. I think it was Google
The
that
hackathon
start.
culture,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
do the
having
80-20%, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like 20% of your time you can
Yeah,
do
so they
that.
started. It was not like hackathon specific, but at least like having like a part of your time where you can work on whatever makes sense for you in terms of like within your role and within the products. I like that. So that's a
Yeah,
great thing. And what made you? What question for you? Actually, just before that, Patrick. Yeah, it's been a long time. Life is great over here in Germany.
nice
I really
Germany.
need to. I really need to find a reason to go back to Germany. It's been forever. Love it. A couple of friends there. Hope life is good for you too. Yes, it would be a little bit better with a job, but outside of that, my life is pretty good.
There's
Uh,
a really cool startup I like out of Germany called DOT Hub. I don't know
oh,
if
I
you've
do
heard
not
of
know
it.
them. No.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're awesome. They're essentially like building this. I guess it's an SDK, but it's also more than that. But it's a really good platform or way to do ETL and build like ETL pipelines. Um, and it's really cool because it's like self-healing and it makes it really easy to like, do reverse ETL, like move data from one service to another, and it's really easy to manage. And the nice thing is that since everything is code, it's like all like you can like version control your ETL pipelines and things. So it's really nice.
Oh, that's great.
But I think
That's
they're in Berlin, yeah. But they're doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, Berlin is
Yeah,
in Germany. As far as I know, is the tech hub is in Berlin,
yeah,
which I love. Nice city. Actually, I said it was a long time, but I was there. I think October or something. We had a team offsite as a
nice.
company and went all to Berlin. Went to Civo Navigate EU, and we took that opportunity to meet in person because I've been remote. The previous company I was working on, Construct, unfortunately closed its door, but when we were together, we were all remote. So,
Hmm.
having those offsites is always a great opportunity to meet people in person. And yeah, Patrick saying Berlin is our Silicon
Oh,
Valley.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Berlin is the tech hub. The place to be. Question for you, Elvis.
Yeah.
Just still talking about jobs.
Hmm.
You moved from developer experience engineer to developer advocate. What triggered that move, if you want to share? Like, what did you decide to move to a developer advocate role? Because from your
Yeah.
definition, the role is different. Like, there's some common ground, but overall, the role is
Yeah.
different.
At the core, I really, really like evangelizing products. Like I was kind of built to be an evangelist in terms of like my personality, and so yeah, being able to evangelize products is really nice, and I have like a lot of passion for it if the product is like legitimately good, right? And so it's like if your product is good, it's like I can tell anyone about it, like on the street, on the bus, like at a meetup, like yeah, I just really like evangelizing. I also like being able to write a lot more to explain like why your product is good or like how it differentiates from something else or what type of affordance or the ergonomics of a particular product and then mapping that to some kind of workflow or use case in terms of something that someone's trying to do. So that's one aspect. And then I also wanted to be in person. And so being in SF, I really wanted to have a bigger team in person because at the time, most of the Warp team was in New York. Yeah, which is really cool. But New York is not, I don't, my personality in New York, they don't match. Yeah. So I was trying to find like a bigger team that was like specifically in San Francisco.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
from my understanding, Chalk only do in person, so they only
Yeah.
hire people in
We're in
San
person.
Francisco.
We have like
Yeah.
30 people in the mission right now, which is really cool. Yeah, it's very, very fun being in
Oh,
person.
good.
Yeah.
Good. That's really important. I mean, like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. We have a job because we need money. I mean, I don't know a lot of people would work if they don't need money, or they would work on different things or
Hmm.
their own stuff or their own projects. But we work because we need money for a living. We live in a place where we need money.
Hmm.
But if you can combine like work with fun, I think it makes your life
That's a
so
dream.
much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like startups. You just have a lot more. You have a lot more agency, right? It's also like there's a much clearer line between the work that I'm doing and its impact on a user or team. Because it's like, oh, this thing that I'm building is gonna help this team like next week. And so being able to have that clear delineation is really different, I think, compared to like big tech. And that's like one of the things I love about startups because it makes
That
me
is.
feel like my work is like relevant and well scoped and things.
It is. I've had job in all types of company, like really small startup where it was like employee number two, 3 or 4,
Hmm.
or medium-sized startup or medium-sized company like Fitbit or DigitalOcean or like Fortune 500 like Microsoft, and they all have their pros and cons. But what I really like about startups is really like, as you said, like you can really be impactful. You're not just a number. Usually, depending on a company, you are one of the first or one of the only person doing developer relation, meaning that like you can
Yeah.
build developer relation foundation. You can basically set the foundation, decide a little bit where you go, how are you going to try to be impactful, how are you going to try to help the company grow while still being respectful toward like what is developer relation. So I
Yeah.
like that thing about like building something, having an impact. And on top of that, you have a great challenge because usually not a lot of people know you. There's not a lot of users, so you really need to build the things from the ground up. I like that about
Yeah.
startups. Again, there is some cons also working about startups, but those are quite interesting benefits from my point of view.
Yeah. Another thing I like about people not knowing you is that it ends up being a forcing function for everything you're putting out to have a value prop, right? So it's like, given that we can't just like um, ride the wave of like some big brand, it's like everything, like all of our messaging, like if you look at our docs, it's like every sentence I write, I'm trying to like communicate a value prop. And I like will just go over it and over and over and be like, can I remove something from this that's not communicating value? That way it's like concise and clear because people don't have a lot of time, but it's also like
Yeah.
on the surface, you're like a small thing. Why should I read this whole thing? And so that's another thing I like in terms of it being a forcing function to be like clear and concise and aligned with value.
Yeah, I like that, and
Yeah.
usually there's a lot of red tapes being able to do that. I remember when I was working at Microsoft, and it may have changed because it's been uh, 13 years that I
Hmm.
left Microsoft, but I was a developer advocate there, and like we did not own the documentation. We
Oh,
had
interesting.
very little communication with the product team, so it
Hmm.
was really hard for us to have like that two-way discussion. Where like, hey, yes, part of my job is to evangelize the product, but a big part of my job is
Hmm.
also to talk to the people and bring the feedback to the product team to help us focus on the right things, improve the roadmap, or at least know if we're going in the right direction. But not owning the docs or not having my input in the docs was probably the most painful things for me because they were doing a great jobs, but sometimes I would be like, hey, we can just fix this or change the way we approach that, or there's that missing piece where I always have to answer that question. If you had that one sentence or that one code example in the docs,
Yeah.
that would make my life easier. And I'm just talking about the people that are vocal about that. For
Yeah.
every person that are vocal about an issue, there's probably like 10 more that just shut up and decided to stop to use your product or just get frustrated. So,
Yeah. Like the people
um,
you don't even see in the statistics because they dropped
exactly.
off before, yeah, you even logged anything. Yeah.
Exactly. So in a
Yeah.
startup, it's easier to have like that also that work relationship with other department, like engineering
Yeah,
or
definitely.
product or even marketing and sales. I mean, like even if my job is not to do sales, even if yes, sometimes we're part of marketing, you can see DevRel as some kind of marketing, but like there's like often a traditional marketing department. Like, what they do affect me positively or not, and the other way around. So we need to be able to connect. We need to be able to talk about like how we're going to approach things, how we're going to be able to help each other being successful in a startup.
Yeah,
It's just a little bit easier to do.
and there's a lot less politics. Um, there's no like, oh, you're encroaching on my scope. It's
Yeah,
like our scope is making the life of our developers, customers better. Like
yeah.
that's the scope. Yeah. So yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you've been, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I was looking at your
Hmm.
LinkedIn profile, and you've been a developer advocate now for about a year. So it's kind of
Hmm.
like a new experience to for you. It seems like you like it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is so
And
fun. Yeah.
and what would you say for people that wants to
To
become
do DevRel.
developer advocate, that wants to do DevRel?
Oh, totally, totally. I think a good place to start is like I really, really like open source. Uh, and so I think a good place to start is like finding an open source project. And ideally you can like contribute to it on the engineering side, but also being able to contribute to that project with regards to like docs and like writing blog posts and then kind of using that as like a staging area so that you can workshop like your ability to write and also speak and communicate well. And the nice thing is that because it's like an actual open source project and ideally it has users, it's like you're actually contributing to something that's useful to others. And so that's I think a good way to start, especially because you can actually like share that work in like some portfolio when you're like interviewing with a company or something. Um,
I like that.
this is also harder for people that aren't in like San Francisco or New York, but like being able to like get plugged in with the developer meetups in your area would also be a good place, and just to like meet other developers, see what they're working on, see how they're thinking about things, and then yeah, just using that to like build community where you are,
Yeah.
because those skills are going to be the same, right? Like whether you end up moving into a larger company and you build internal community, or you end up building the external community for a company, it's like you can theoretically start doing that now in your local area, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that there's meetups everywhere, so there's a chance for you to connect with people. And the thing though is that usually what is great with developer relation is that even if you don't have professional experience with the multiple things that a developer advocates do,
Mhm.
you can start to get experience on a personal level. For me,
Yeah.
when I was approached by Microsoft for being a developer advocate many, many, many years ago, I'm old. Basically, it was because I was doing what a developer advocates do, but on
Is
my free
doing.
time. I was
Yeah.
writing blogs. I started to speak at conferences. I was
Yeah.
organizing meetups, and did notice me in the community. And when they were looking for someone where I live, my name came up a couple of times, not because I was better than other people. It's just because
Yeah.
you've seen my
You're already
face
doing
a
it.
lot
Yeah.
more often. I was
Yeah.
already doing it. So they were looking. So I didn't have the professional experience as a developer advocate, but I was doing that on my free time, and they noticed me. So, and
Yeah.
meetups is also, I like that you said meetup, because meetup is a great place to connect and network with people, but it's also a great place to do public speaking. Like most of
Yeah.
the
Definitely.
meetups, they're going to have a meetup per month, maybe except during summertime, and which mean that they always need 1 to 2, 3 or 4 speakers per month. And yes, there's a lot of people that do public speaking, but that's an opportunity for you to have a spot. And usually meetups are a little more welcoming to first time speaker than conferences, where conferences they charge money for tickets. So sometimes they're
Yeah.
going to look for more professional or experienced speaker. But meetups usually, not all of them, it depends on the organizers, but they're usually more open to have first time speaker. And you know what, you just try it. First talk may be terrible. Let's be honest. Our first talks were all terribles, but like you learn and you get better. And that's a great place to do that in meetups, because usually people are really friendly and they're just going to support you trying to do that. And building that speaking experience is going to also show well if you want to get a developer advocate job.
Yeah. And it's almost I always think of stand-up comedians, right? Because it's like if you like watch someone's like Netflix stand-up and then you watch them in an interview, they're gonna tell you they were like doing 5-minute sets at 11:30 p.m. in New York, right, for like 4 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like our equivalent is like going to meetups and like because SF we have a bunch of like super fast pitches at meetups that are like 3.5 minutes, right? And it's like I've done that 50 times, right, for Chalk. And so it's like for me, it's like I'm not really nervous when I have 15 minutes. I'm actually more excited because like I'm so used to trying to do this in 3.5 minutes. It's like I can finally breathe and get 15 minutes, right? So it ends up actually flipping at least the anxiety aspect of public speaking because I'm like, oh, I finally get actual time to like explain this more deeply. And so I actually like the longer talks and I'm more excited about those because I'm so used to being pressed to like get something in like 4 minutes and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
That's great. So, talk to me a little bit about Chalk. What is it? What's the company? What are you doing? I know you're gonna right after we can jump to the demo part,
The demo,
so we can
yeah.
understand a little more the product. But maybe a quick intro about what it is.
Yeah, totally. So uh, you can think of it as a feature engine, and so I think typically when people find Chalk, they're looking for a feature store, but in practice, that is like maybe 5% of what we do, and actually the least interesting aspect of Chalk. Um, yeah, yeah, and so we're trying to build essentially a data infrastructure platform that's really, really good for doing real-time inference. And by real time, we don't mean streaming. It's people often confuse real time with streaming. But what we mean is being able to get the right data from the right place at the right time. And so it's essentially like you have some client that will request features from Chalk. And features is like a machine learning term, but it's really just like data points. So it
Hmm.
might be like, email address, it might be credit score, some other fraud score, some normalized rating, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's called a feature. And so essentially what happens is you'll request features from Chalk, and then Chalk can essentially a can dynamically build a query plan depending on the features that you request. And then we can go out to a bunch of different data sources. So think like different databases, as well as making like uh, calls to like APIs or microservices. And then we can fetch data, and then we can run all of your transformations to get you the features that you want back. And so you're pretty much running like some ML pipeline end to end in under 10 milliseconds. And so the hard
Okay.
part is making this, sub 10 milliseconds. That way it's good for real time. And the cool thing though is that if you can accomplish this, you end up being able to streamline a lot of your organizations like ETL pipelines and a lot of their data flows. And then Chalk is kind of just like this like mesh that you like use to like get data from different places and make sure that you get it in a transformed way. That way you can like if you make an update to your model, you don't have to wait like 3 weeks for to run a backfill, right? Which is really really
Okay.
nice and it's really good for yeah. And so the end goal is that you can eventually engineer your features faster and update your models faster. And we've seen people go from like updating models once a quarter to like every day even.
Oh
So
well.
it's a huge difference. Yeah.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
you know what? I want to see it in action. I think it's the
Yeah.
time
Totally.
for the demo. So you just have to. Hopefully, it's going to work. We didn't test a share screen before the show, like I usually do. I forgot about that. But yeah, just share your
Yeah.
screen, and we're going to go from there. And while you do that,
Yeah.
just letting you know, folks, as you may or may not know. I'm looking for my next challenge. Unfortunately, Construct closed its door, which is sad because we had an amazing product, a great team. We were pretty successful with the open source project, but yeah, this is live. So now I'm looking for my next work, my next job,
Mhm.
probably as a developer advocate because I'm doing that for 14 years. So if you see any opening, feel free. Please feel free to tag me on LinkedIn, on others people posts, or share things with me, or just connect with me if you are hiring a developer advocate. Just so you know, I'm based in Canada, but I've been remote for the last 14 years and pretty successful at it. So
Yeah.
just self promote here. Looking for a job. That was not my goal, but that's life. So just putting this out there. And on that note, I'm going to shut up. And
Nice.
I'm seeing some code. So I already
Yeah.
like
So you
that.
can see this. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. Cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
So Mike's is yours.
Yeah. Totally. So usually when you're building ML systems in Chalk, you end up outlining a bunch of your feature classes. And so this is going to be like a Python data class. And so in this example, we have classes for things like reviews and like sellers and users and transactions. And what you end up doing is you end up putting like the fields or attributes or columns that you care about. And so, for example, this review has an ID, it has like a timestamp, it has a headline, it has a review body, and it also has a rating. And then the cool thing is that in your like Git repository, you're gonna have a Chalk SQL file. So this is like a regular SQL file in that I can run this and then I can get data back from this table. And what happens is you pull the column that you want from this table. And so you have Chalk. So Chalk's going to go out to this like Postgres table and then query this when you end up pulling features or making a query with Chalk. And you just tell Chalk what feature class you want to hydrate with these features. And so we're going to hydrate this marketplace review class. And so if I make a query for this marketplace review, Chalk is going to go out to that table and pull those features out. And so the nice thing is that once we have our base features, we can make computed features. And so an example is this review, I'm going to consider it positive if the rating is over 4, right? And so this underscore is a self-reference. So this looks, we call these Chalk expressions, and they're a lot like Lambda, but I can essentially reference a feature from my own class, and then I can like run some function, and then I can store that as a new feature. And the nice thing is that I can also create new features with like Python functions. So I have this normalized rating function, and if I scroll down a bit, I can see that we have this get normalized rating function. And so what happens is I can use the type annotations to tell Chalk, okay, what features does this function need to compute the new normalized rating? And so we're going to tell Chalk, we want you to pull out the star rating. We want you to pull out, we're going to go into the product connected to this review. And then we're going to pull out the total number of reviews and also the average rating. And then we're going to run this function. And then we're going to store this as normalized rating. And the cool thing is that I can have another function that also references normalized rating, right? So these can be like nested and, many functions can depend on other functions, which is really, really nice. And what ends up happening is if I like go to my CLI, I can,
I see you're using Word.
yeah, a little warp. So like I can, for example, I can query product number 2192, and then I can ask for certain features back, right? And so like in this query, I can also ask for 2 extra features, and I can run this query again, and then I'll see I'm getting 2 extra features back. And so in the review case, we're going to run this query called review. And so in this review case, we're pulling out a lot more features than before. And the nice thing is that if I look at the graph for this query, I can see that
Oh,
um,
nice.
I can see that Chalk went out to this review table, product table, user table, seller table, and then it pulled features out from review. It ran some aggregations, and then we fed those into the normalized rating function, and then that got fed into this function, right? And then we can essentially have this huge DAG or dependency graph for my features and how they're computed. And then depending on what I want, we just slice that DAG and make a subgraph, and then we can make a new query plan depending on what you want. That way we're never fetching extra data than what it is that you want. And so the coolest thing though is that this yellow node right here is that normalized rating function that I showed you earlier.
Mhm.
And so even though we wrote it as Python, we actually have an interpreter, and then we end up transpiling that function into static expressions. And so this doesn't get run as Python, but it gets run as like, UDFs. That way it's like super, super fast. And so in practice, this whole pipeline end to end can run under 10 milliseconds. And usually the only things that run longer than that are pipelines that have LLM calls, right? Because we can't speed up LLM calls. And so if I go back to my code here, one thing to note is that we're able to tell Chalk how this review is connected to a product using this product ID, right? And so we're fetching product ID from that SQL file that I showed you earlier. But instead of it being a string, we can point to this ID attribute of the other feature class. So Chalk knows that this is a foreign key, right? And so this is how Chalk can essentially pass through into other tables and then pull the relevant data for what it needs. And the nice thing about this is that because we have this foreign key, we can pull out features from the marketplace product connected to this review. And so one of the other benefits of this kind of architecture is that if I go to the marketplace product, I can actually make data frames or tables of other objects. So I can say this product has many reviews. And so we have this data frame of marketplace review. And then I can essentially do things like aggregations over this data frame, which is really cool. So I can
Okay.
say like the average rating is going to be the reviews data frame, and I'm going to pull out this column, star rating, and then I'm going to run this mean, and that's going to be our average rating. Or I can do things like, okay, get me the maximum value from this data frame for this column, sorted by this particular field. So this gives me the most recent review for this product, you know. And the nice thing is that we also have um, there's also like affordances around like being able to do this over time intervals, and so I can import this windowed type, and I can essentially do this same aggregation, but instead I'm using a count here, but I can essentially pass in or have Chalk pass in the past 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then I can essentially pull this feature out based off of this like time interval, right? So I can say I want the review count from the past 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And the nice thing as well is that in addition to being able to do that, we can also tile or materialize this particular feature. And so I can have Chalk in advance go and pre-compute the review count for across every 3 days, you know, like let's say for the past year or something. And that way at query time, instead of me querying and pulling in, you know, millions of reviews, I'm only pulling in like 120 reviews for the past year, right? Because these have been pre-computed. And then Chalk can incrementally add new data from the last bucket. Does that make sense? Or this
Yep.
part? Yeah. And I can tell Chalk that, you know, this is the schedule at which I want you to run this on. So I can give it a cron schedule. And so the cool thing about this is that in addition to like being able to like manage your features, we can also programmatically like set up these ETL pipelines. And the nice thing is that because Chalk sets them up, we have really, really good observability because we know like, okay, the way that this review count ends up being aggregated is like in the code next to the feature itself. It's not like some ETL pipeline that's set up through a console, and then I just have to know either I have to know that this was set up this particular way. It's like all of this is like co-located in your code, which is really, really nice. And then I guess one other thing I wanted to show you is that we also have good support for like LLMs, and so I can make an LLM feature, and then I can pull out things like I can like pass in like a structured output. And the nice thing is that the Chalk will then manage like running this as a part of your pipeline. And so it makes it really easy to incorporate LLMs into ML systems, which is something that enterprises are struggling with right now. And we also have like first class support for things like vectors. So I can like pass in a feature, I can call some embedding provider, and then I can have Chalk embedded and then save this as a vector. And so there's a lot of ergonomics around like making it easier to build like ML systems and not have to worry about making infrastructure that's like fast and high performance. Yeah. And so like if I'm gonna go back to this diag real quick. And so this purple node, so it stays purple because we couldn't make it faster. And if we give you an explanation as to why, and it's because we can't accelerate this function, right? But this is a chat completion.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I can actually like go into this resolver, and then I can like look at the code for this resolver, like in the dashboard, and be like, okay, this is an LM call. We're passing in, you know, the title, and then we're having the LLM, you know, essentially do structured output to give back a genre, a confidence score, and then a reason, right? And then we'll save these as new features. And so we're just trying to build, you know, a really big platform that makes it easy for like AI engineers, data scientists, and ML teams to like all work in the same space. So that's kind of a summary of what Chalk looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I actually have one more slide to show you. Uh,
Please. There's no
yeah,
demo without slides.
So I guess so I'm gonna try to go over some of the challenges in building a type of thing, and so this type of thing, and so like one thing is that the skills for building, you know, high performance infra is very different than that for like machine learning and doing statistics. Like you can get a PhD in both of these things, right? And so we're trying to essentially unify like the data scientists as well as like ML ops teams. And ideally, if we can build a platform that lets them both work in the same place, you can get a ton of productivity out of it. And so what ends up happening with some companies is like a data science team will have a bunch of Jupyter notebooks, and then they'll hand that off to a different team, and that team is responsible for productionizing those notebooks into like actual infra. And a lot of times that ends up being like rewriting things from Python into something like Scala. And what ends up happening is like the exploration that a data scientist did ends up not translating one to one when it gets shipped to production. And then you end up having this like cycle of like, okay, we need you to change the production model this way based off of our analysis. And then it takes months to ship a new model that works well. And then the second thing is that Chalk is really, really fast. And some of the things that it takes for Chalk to be fast is owning the stack with a big enough surface area that we can make optimizations end to end. So it's like if we know you're going to filter a feature, it's like ideally when we're querying that feature, right, we can pass that filter all the way through the pipeline to the actual query engine itself, and we can do the filter through the query engine, right? So being able to like have this visibility across the stack end to end is really helpful for being able to make this fast. And then the second thing is that we also, it's declarative, right? And so we build this dependency graph of your features, and usually building things that are declarative are a bad developer experience for the user. So think things like, you know, old TensorFlow or like YAML. And so for us, it's like we want this to be declarative, and because we need this DAG that way we can optimize it the same way you would a SQL query. And so we ended up building a DSL, right? And it just happens that we've specifically designed the DSL to have Python syntax. That way it's accessible and readable, and it people don't even know that we're building a DAG essentially. Like it just feels natural. And then the last thing is that being
Like
able
that.
to have super fast compute makes it so that we can essentially capture your model and what it means purely as code, right? So instead of like a machine learning team will typically like need to make a model faster, so they'll like pre-compute some more features on the ETL side, and then eventually if they want to update their model, they also need to go back and redo some of these ETL pipelines because those transformations you did on the ETL side are meaningful to your model.
Yeah,
And us being able to have a clean break and separating those two things makes it so that your model is purely code. And that means
I
like
like
you
that.
can have a branch, I can have a branch, and these are technically different models. And then I can run like production traffic through your branch or my branch, and we can A/B test our branches, right? So that's a huge unlock for teams because now
Like
you
that.
can like deploy with a lot more confidence.
I like
Yeah,
everything that can be done with code because like
yeah,
all the benefits that come with it. So yeah, I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, and you get a data lineage, right? Because it's like because we don't have this intermediary like ETL
Hmm.
pipeline, it's like I know the exact like row and column that I fetched when I ran this decision, and so that's good for a company that's like giving out loans, right? Because they can say like these
Hmm.
are the exact data points that we pulled when we decided we'd either accept you or not accept you, and so it gives a lot of auditability, which is really good for compliance.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense. Makes sense. Awesome. So if
yeah,
people
totally.
want to try Chalk, is I've seen that like the SDKs are open source, but the product itself is not. Am I right?
Yeah, so you can like build features and stuff, but you wouldn't be able to like deploy it per se.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you'll
and
go
when it
on
gets deployed,
Chalk AI, Chalk.ai, and
yeah,
we're good
yeah,
to go.
yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, I cut you. You were going to say
I,
something.
I was gonna say that one of the coolest thing about Chalk is that we deploy into the VPC of the customer or the enterprise, and so that's really important because it's like we don't want your data, like we don't want anything to do with your data, you know. So you get to keep your data, you get to keep your data sources, and then we also let them choose like what they want backing their feature store, for example. So it's like if you want Redis or Dynamo or BigQuery or this, it's like you can use whatever you want, and so it gives a lot of people control over how they want their workloads to look like or the SLAs that they have. And another nice thing is that because we're in the VPC, it makes it really easy for a team to add new data from another team because they already have access to it, right? Because it's already deployed in your cloud. And because we do everything dynamically at inference time, it's like you don't have to have that team change their schema. You can just use their schema as is and then have Chalk do the transformations. So it's really good for like making models have more context, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for the demo. Tesfa was like, "Yay, good job,"
Oh,
and
nice.
I agree. I agree with that. Before I'll let you go, any last word? Anything you want to share about DevRel, yourself, Chalk, whatever? It's your time.
About Devrel. Oh yeah, there's a DevRel conference in New York this summer.
Yeah,
I
DevRelCon.
think I think the dates are July 17th through the 19th, something around there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
it's
that's a really good
17
place.
to 18.
Yeah, so that's a really good place to meet a lot of other DevRel. And I went last year and had a ton of fun. And it's really nice because you get to talk about like, okay, how are you guys thinking about go to market or thinking about this? And you get to like talk to people that are on the ground with you. And yeah, and there usually are, companies sponsoring and companies hiring. And so that's also a good place to, try to break out if you're trying to get a DevRel role.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree. I'm really happy MLH jumped in last year to
Yeah,
run the
they're awesome.
conference. Funny enough, I've never been able to go to DevRelCon anywhere in the world. I was supposed to be there last year. I
Mhm.
had some plane issues, and
And it was storming a
finally,
lot last year.
yeah, yeah.
Like so many flights got canceled. Yeah.
Yeah, my flight got canceled, and the
Yeah.
other one got canceled. The other one got canceled, and at the end, I was maybe able to take a flight like on Sunday morning and arrive like for lunchtime on the last day of the conference. I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? I really want to see folks in person, but nope, not gonna happen. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take a flight for like 2 3 hours. So unfortunately, I was not able to be there. I'll see this year. It
Hmm.
seems to be a little more complicated for people outside of the U.S. to travel now for different
Yeah.
reasons. So I'll see if I'm gonna take a chance and go to the conference. I already have my ticket. I bought it last year, but I may not go for reasons. I'll see how it goes. And on
Hmm.
top of that, I'm jobless right now. I'm unemployed, and usually my company is paying for my TNE. So now I need to, maybe
Hmm.
not go to the conference. We'll see. But like if I go, happy to meet folks in person. But in any cases, even without having been there myself, I know it's an amazing conference. Just knowing that John from LH is organizing it,
Organizing.
it's
Yeah.
great. And having like all those DevRel folks, it's the place to be if you are a developer advocate. So on that note, folks, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks, Elvis, for being my
Yeah. Totally.
guest. It was a pleasure. We did not know each other before. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for sharing about your experience. Thanks for sharing the demo about Chuck.
Hmm.
Really interesting product. And folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for saying hi. And if you have any question about Chuck, go and Chuck.ai. There is a way probably to talk to Elvis or talk to other people in the team, or leave a comment on YouTube, and I'll follow up with Elvis on those if you
Yeah.
have any question. But on that note, I wish everybody a good rest of the day, and see you in 2 weeks for the next Devrel show.
Cool. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.